The recession in 2008 and 2009 was bad, but it was not. Although this new economic downturn is only a few months old, we already see the numbers we haven't seen since the worst parts of the Great Depression of the 1930s. Over 48 million Americans have made new claims for unemployment benefit over the past 15 weeks. Over 100,000 businesses have closed their doors permanently, and civil unrest has turned several of our major cities into war zones. However, not all regions of the country are affected equally. For example, our rural areas have not seen many COVID-19 cases, which seem to change little compared to 6 months ago. On the other hand, some urban areas that have been hit very hard by COVID-19 have been absolutely economically devastated. For example, New York Times reports that 1 million jobs have disappeared in New York, and New York City's unemployment rate is approaching 20%. New York City, hit hard by the coronavirus pandemic, is mired in the worst economic calamity since the financial crisis of the 1970s, when it nearly went bankrupt. The city is staggering toward reopening with some workers back at their desks or behind cash registers, and on Monday it began a new phase, allowing personal care services like nail salons and some outdoor recreation to resume. Even so, the city's unemployment rate is hovering near 20%, a figure not seen since the Great Depression. What was intended as a pause has dragged on so long that, for many workers, fallouts are turning into permanent job losses. The sudden shutdown of the city nearly 4 months ago threw at least 1 million people out of work and threatened the survival of many of their employers. We will use the phrase "since the Great Depression" a lot in the coming months. The fear of COVID-19 will paralyze our economy for the foreseeable future, and all this fear strikes some companies more seriously than others. On Tuesday, Levi Strauss announced that sales fell 62% in the second quarter. The denim maker Levi Strauss & Co. sales fell 62% during its fiscal second quarter, the company announced Tuesday, as its online sales were not enough to make up for its stores being temporarily shut for roughly 10 weeks during the COVID-19 crisis. If Levi Strauss expected this to be just a temporary mishap, they would probably try to keep all their employees on board. But instead, they seem to believe that hard times will remain here, and they decided to eliminate about 700 jobs. Levi's also announced it will be slashing about 15% of its global corporate workforce, impacting about 700 jobs in a bid to cut costs during the coronavirus pandemic. It said the move should generate annualized savings for Levi's of $100 million. Its shares initially fell in after-hours trading, but recently were up less than 1%. Although we are starting to see some green shoots, we need to continue to be cautious. Chief Executive Chip Bergh said in a memo sent to the company's employees, which was obtained by CNBC, there could be a second wave of COVID-19 cases and resulting store closures, he added. Of course, many other companies are now laying off workers. More than 1,427 million Americans have made new claims last week for unemployment benefit, which is definitely a disastrous figure. Before 2020, the worst week in United States history for new unemployment claims was in 1982, when 695,000 unemployed workers applied in a single week. What we are witnessing now is nothing more than a tsunami of job losses. And even CNN admits that millions of lost jobs will never return. The American economy's unprecedented jobs rebound masks a difficult truth for millions of people. The jobs they lost are never coming back. It's clear that the pandemic is doing some fundamental damage to the job market, said Mark Zandi, chief economist for Moody's Analytics. A lot of jobs lost aren't coming back anytime soon. The idea that the economy is going to snap back to where it was before the pandemic is clearly not going to happen. I couldn't say myself better. Millions of unemployed workers suddenly found themselves in desperate need, as most Americans paid a salary to pay before the outbreak erupted. I've recorded a lot of podcasts about the tremendous lines we witnessed at food banks across the country, and we witnessed a 2-mile long line at a food bank in Florida. More than 700 cars were seen waiting in a 2-mile long food bank line in Florida as the United States grapples with nearly half of Americans being unemployed amid a spike in new coronavirus cases that has sparked fears of more shutdowns and layoffs. Sunrise Assistant Leisure Services Director Mary Little, who was put in charge of food distribution for the city when the coronavirus hit the United States in March, said her group served about 720 cars in Miami on Wednesday. This does not seem like an improvement. In fact, the numbers are deteriorating rapidly for certain sectors of the economy. For example, check what CNBC is reporting. Delinquencies in commercial mortgage-backed securities last month had their largest one-month surge since Fitch Ratings began tracking the metric nearly 16 years ago. The delinquency rate hit 3.59% in June and increased from 1.46% in May. New delinquencies totaled $10.8 billion in June, raising the total delinquent pool to $17.2 billion. Fitch Rating, on the other hand, points out what these figures will get worse in the coming months. It may not be surprising given the massive economic impact of the coronavirus pandemic, but the numbers are still remarkable, and this is just the beginning. Fitch analysts are projecting that the impact from the coronavirus pandemic will drive the delinquency rate to between 8.25% and 8.75% by the end of the third quarter of this year. I said this before and I will say it again. We are on the verge of the largest commercial mortgage meltdown in the history of the United States. Numerous restaurants and retailers lag behind in lease payments, and as a result, many commercial property owners are making it increasingly difficult to make mortgage payments. As the dominoes start to fall and move towards 2021 and beyond, this will be really messy. Of course, the same can be said about the United States economy. We are on the cliff of the most chaotic part of American history, and a decadent economy will be part of the perfect storm we are facing. So use the summer months to prepare for the future, because even though things are bad now, the truth is that we have only experienced the front edge of the perfect storm. Most of the idea, comment, information, and criticism containing in these videos have been created by Daily News Report. Before making any important investment decision, use the information contained in these videos as a starting point for conducting your own research. If you make any investment or legal decision, it is advised to consult an expert before making this decision.